Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm coming to you today with a squadron-specific build video, and we're going to be focusing on Major Rhymer and what is affectionately called the RhymerBall. So I'll be using Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder, and I'm going to switch right over to basically what the RhymerBall is. It generally has four parts. Well, first part being Major Rhymer himself. And if you're not familiar with him, what he does is he allows squadrons who are at distance one of him to be able to attack ships at close to medium range using all dice in their battery armament. So in other words, this is significant here because close to medium range specifically flips the range ruler over and uses the ships close to medium range. So that's very, very far. Whereas normally squadrons are using the numbered side, they can only attack at distance 1. This affectionately brings it about to distance 3, where the close to medium range is. So it's definitely farther, but you'll be flipping it over, and you could do the red or blue dice line, and that's close to medium range. So basically, we have Major Rhymer as the core. The second part that we need is bombers. It doesn't have to be the TIE bomber squadron specifically, but we generally want ships with bombers. So when they're attacking ships, they can make the most of what they have. It's important to know that Major Rhymer's ability affects all friendly squadrons, not just bombers, but it works best with bombers, and he has bomber himself. Next thing we want is a escort to protect Major Rhymer, otherwise the enemy ships will come right in, enemy squadrons will come right in and blow him to bits. So we need somebody to defend Major Rhymer. And then we need this handy dandy keyword right here called Intel. Intel is amazing, and we need that to prevent a single TIE advance or a single A-wing or somebody from just flying into the center of your RhymerBall and having it all tied up and having to shoot at that, effectively taking one or two or even three or four activations away from you. And the reason this is called a RhymerBall is because it's got Major Rhymer, and you tend to fly these squadrons as close together as you possibly can. You want them all to be grouped up, and on the map it looks kind of like a ball of doom, but it has a pretty big attack radius, and you want Major Rhymer in the center of that ball. And if you're going to have two TIE advanced, you're going to want them kind of equidistant on either side to kind of give him as much protection as possible. And the same goes with the jump masters. You generally want them kind of on the outer edges, but wherever somebody's likely to be able to try to fly up and engage. And this is a 127 points worth of RhymerBall right here, and this was very popular after Wave 2. So between Wave 3 and 4, this is still flown today. There are other ways to modify this, but this is kind of the start point, although this is expensive because you'd have to have 8 TIE bombers to field this. There's all kinds of variation. You don't have to even go with bombers because this TIE advance could roll 1 black die and still have a pretty good chance of getting a hit. The Jump Master only a 50% chance of getting a hit, but he's not there to attack. He's there for support. Now, this would also be generally supported by either ISDs with their squadron value of 4, Victories with their squadron value of 3, or with Gazantes that only have squadron value of 2, but they also have Bomber Command Center. And Bomber Command Center is very, very good. You can have that right next to your RhymerBall and give those guys all rerolls, which is great. Now, let's talk about some of the other upgrades that you may see here. There's plenty more. I'm only going to touch on a few of them. Expanded Hangar Bay is very, very good if you're going to have a Gazanti support. Of course, this can work on any of the ships. It just gives you one more squadron value. And if you're going to be doing squadron commands the whole time, that's a good idea. Another one that used to get used an awful lot is Boosted Comms, and Boosted Comms just gives you farther range where you can basically hit your squadrons. And it's still a good card, especially for only 4 points. And then another one that I think is pretty interesting is Flight Controllers. This one isn't actually a staple in RhymerBalls, but it is important on ships that are going to be doing squadron commands the whole time. You are eventually going to face, squadron opposition, and when you have to, sooner or later you're going to have to attack the enemy squadrons, and this is great on a ship that is going to be the one who basically hits your TIE advanced or any of your. You're going to have some squadrons in your RhymerBall that can attack squadrons better than these little TIE bombers here. So you'll want to activate, in this case it would be the TIE advanced and maybe even Major Rhymer and the Jump Master with this ship that has flight controllers on it that will help cut down any threats to Major Rhymer or the TIE bombers. and also your jump masters. You would need, or if they ever come up with anything else with intel, it would protect that as well. Now there's other versions of this. Once we had rogues and villains, also people were starting to buy more of them. I mean, we already had rogues and villains because we had intel, but some people, this is called the Fireball, and it's still a RhymerBall, but it's using fire sprays. And one of the strengths of this is these fire sprays are much tougher. And they have rogues, so they can activate on their own at the end of each round, so they don't require as many squadron commands, so you don't have to have as many ships dedicated to issuing squadron commands. So that's huge. Another thing people were swapping in and out, and these can go in either version of the build, is Darth Vader as your escort, because he's so much more powerful, and also Dengar because he's also so much more powerful as far as a jump master, although it all really boils down to points. If you want to squeeze as many points as you can into here, you might have to downgrade one to a generic, but these are both very, very popular squadrons to be seen inside a RhymerBall, or in a lot of different squadron formations, but specifically with the RhymerBall. So I want to take a look at some of the newer stuff that's come out since 3 and 4, and with Wave 5 we've got some newer stuff. So starting off, we would still have Major Rhymer. Jump Masters are always good. Your escorts are always good. But one of the new things we got is the Lambda. Now the Lambda is really cool because it doesn't mean that we don't have to have everything close by anymore. Before we had boosted comms. And that was oh, we don't want them out of range. Well, if you have, let me go back here. If we go back to having lambdas, now we don't have to worry about range at all. So that's really good, especially if you're going to use Gazantes. You might want to have a couple of lambdas in there. Although they're not particularly good at offense, so you're spending a lot of points on support at that point. Next, just the opposite, is the TIE Defender. They're not support at all, but they're amazing, and they're really good in just about all situations. So the TIE Defender is a great way to put stuff into your RhymerBall, and what's so great about them is their hull. They're much stronger. They're, well, are they stronger, actually? Hold on a second. Okay, yeah, they are strong. They're tougher hull. But yes, they have a hull value of 6. But really where they're stronger is in their offense. They can really destroy enemy squadrons. So you don't really have to worry about somebody coming in and threatening. You still have to protect Major Rhymer. But if you swap out your bombers with TIE Defenders, those defenders are now really nasty to enemy squadrons. And so people are gonna, have to come in with something survivable if they want to threaten your RhymerBall. Now they only have the blue die for attack, but that's fine because if you have bomber, you still have a 75% chance of getting a damage through. So that's still pretty good, but they're kind of like universally good. They're good in every situation. They're good against squadrons, they're good against ships, they're really, really fast, and they're really, really tough. They cost a little bit more because they cost 16, but they are completely universal, and you will never find yourself in a situation where you regret having a TIE Defender. Next, the Decimators. Now, Decimators are not bomber, but they still work really well with Rhymer because they've got 3 anti-ship dice. So I don't mind not having bomber if I'm going to be able to roll 3 dice. So the more blue dice you roll, the better they start to become. You've only got 2 crits on a blue die, so you might get 2 damage and then an accuracy, and normally an accuracy would be bad, but here an accuracy might be great. Oh, you can't brace that 2 damage down to 1. So that's great. They also have rogues, so they don't have to, so they're going to activate at the end. And they're also really effective against squadrons. 3 black dice against squadrons, you have a 75% chance of having a hit on a black die. So you have a pretty good chance of rolling 2 or 3 hits every time you attack a squadron. So you can one-shot TIE fighters pretty easily. They're just really, really nice. And they have counter, so if they're getting shot at, they can defend themselves that way. They have heavy already, so they weren't going to tie anybody up. You just want to use them for offense, and Rhymer really extends their offense. The TIE Phantom is another really nice option, in that it's got 2 dice. Now they don't have bomber, but they have 2 anti-ship dice, and they're red dice too. So if you're using you won't be able to use Bomber Command Center, but if you're using Rhymer, you're going to get these red dice at longer range and really take advantage of that. And also, like the TIE Defender, they have a lot of anti-squadron dice. Although they're blue, they're not as good as having some black in there also, but they are better against aces because you're more likely to get that accuracy to target the scatter. So Phantoms are very cool, although their ability doesn't necessarily synergize specifically with Major Rhymer. They are very nice for their lots of dice. And if you got the Corellian conflict, this is actually a pretty nice one. If you wanted to maybe upgrade one of your escorts to the Tempest squadron, he also has Bomber. So you're going to spend an extra point on this guy, but his offense becomes that much more powerful with the Bomber keyword, and it fits in perfectly with a RhymerBall. So that's basically Major Rhymer. And there's a lot of other ways that you can, just about every squadron that I've named here, you can maybe put in a named version of them. And IG-88 too is, he doesn't work with the RhymerBall, but he's one of the people you have to be cautious against if you are facing, or if you're using a RhymerBall, because he can come right in and ignore the escort, and he could go straight for Major Rhymer. Of course, Major Rhymer's got the brace, so you're not as much at risk of that happening. But he might go straight for your jump master or whatever, and that's why I have things like 2 jump masters in this one and 2 escorts, just in case you get that lucky IG-88 who comes in, rolls 4 hits, and then your jump master's dead, and now you're completely, your whole plan is falling apart. So it's generally a good idea if you're going with like 120 or more points of squadrons to have 2 intel sources and 2 escorts at least. But it's okay if you want to do just maybe the named ones. Dengar can always scatter, well, usually, and so like it's a trade-off. But it's up to you, however you want to build it. But these are 2 really popular ways to do it, and you can swap this out. You can totally mess it, change it up, and maybe you want to do a little bit of everything. We'll add a TIE Defender in there, and then a TIE Bombers. Add a couple of those. Let's do 2 of each. We're at 107 points, and let's add. What the heck? Let's add a Decimator. That puts us to 129, and there it's about all we're gonna get. But now, either way, having a lot of squadrons are great. I like to have as many bombers as I can, typically because they're cheap, and it also gives you a nice setup advantage of being able to drop 2 bombers at a time, and prolong you having to place your ships. But that's the RhymerBall, guys. That's Major Rhymer, and that's kind of how a lot of builds with him work. Stay tuned for the next video I do for Squadrons. I'm going to cover some Rebel B-Wing or Rebel Bomber builds, maybe not specifically just B-Wings, but it will cover B-Wings, and basically the Rebel builds that you might want to use with Dodana to get those crits in there. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe, like this video, and leave me a comment and tell me what you think. Thank you so much, guys, and have a wonderful day.